С това нашата програма продължава с първата от трите тематични сесии, които сме подготвили за днешния ден. И това е първата тематична сесия, е мерки за превенция в Европа. И в този панел, който сме обособили, имаме двама говорители и аз с голямо удоволствие ще ви представя и двамата, така че да осигурим да няма да не губим време в излишно представяне между презентациите. Първият ни говорител е доктор Серджо Бианки от IM4 International. С доктор Бианки и неговите колеги Център за изследване на демокрацията работи доста дълги години. Работим и по други съвместни проекти и инициативи и за нас е голямо удоволствие и изключително много се радваме, че има възможност за сътрудничество с тази организация. В миналото сме работили доста усърдно по разработването на програми за обучения. IM4 имат много доста вълнуващо портфолио от дейности, свързани с образователни програми, специално с използването на новите технологии, като виртуална и добавена реалност. И като цяло е изключително удоволствие да се работи с колегите от Италия. Презентацията, която ще чуете в момента е малко по-различна, но въпреки това, тъй като ще представя доктор Бианки, знаем, че тя ще бъде изключително интересна. И следващия ни говорител в този панел е господин Димитър Марков, който вече чухте тази сутрин, директор на правната програма към Центъра за изследване на демокрацията. И той ще ви запознае малко повече относно приложението на Европейската заповед за арест в контекст на борбата с тероризма. Центъра за изследване на демокрацията е национален кореспондент към Европейската агенция за основните права и регулярно участваме в техни проучвания и презентацията ще бъде засегната и част от работата, която е свършена в рамките на сътрудничество с тази организация. Без повече отлагане, бих искала да поканя доктор Бианки да се присъедини за неговата презентация и също така и колегата Димитър Марков.
Thank you, Tatiana, for your presentation. I pay you a commission then for the nice words, of course. Well, I like the presentation of the conference. If you can go back to the logo of this conference, the presentation, it's very interesting because we have two images there. One, the image of justice, and then the logo of the police. So, well, in reality, the project Pre-Rights is exactly around this topic, how justice can be combined with security, how prevention can be somehow integrated into a broader picture, which has to do with a number of actors, because what is the prevention and how prevention can be implemented? It's for sure a challenge at European level. And it's a big challenge at national level, considering the legal differences, considering the complexity of the topic. So relation between justice, security, and cooperation, multi-level and multi-agency cooperation is one of the key challenge we have now, and we will have for sure in the future. This is particularly relevant when we speak about pre-crime phenomena, because even though we tend to mix up radicalization with terrorism or radicalization with crimes, in reality, radicalization is not a crime. And therefore, we are moving into one, we are operating into one context. Okay. We are operating into one context, which is a pre-criminal context. So it might lead, as we usually say, radicalization leading to terrorism. It might lead to crimes, to violence, to terrorism, but not necessarily. So it is a highly politicized context. It is a hybrid context where we have involved law enforcement agencies carrying out analysis, intelligence-led investigations, using very advanced tools. We just finished in Italy yesterday a training course for the investigative police on the use of OSINT. And because we bought through European funds OSINT solution for different prosecutor offices. So OSINT is a very powerful tool. You can explore a lot of aspects of our behavior online. You can somehow profile all our life. For what? For investigation, yes, but not only. For prevention also. Because in the majority of the cases, the main European investigations on terrorism are based on intelligence analysis before the crime has been committed. And we are lucky for this because we cannot wait the events occur, the critical event to occur before acting preventive measures. On the other hand, we want to have the freedom to move in the cyberspace, exploring opportunities, relations, exploring interaction with other people, searching, and so on. So how to balance these elements is still a very critical issue. Also because the power of technology combined with legal tools, combined with police, combined with the jurisdiction of the expanding jurisdiction of law enforcement agencies and the legal agencies who are able to investigate crimes behind the territorial borders. So it's a complete new phenomenon that we have to take into consideration. We speak about foreign fighters, we speak about the new agreement between Eurojust and Ukraine. So when we speak about foreign fighters coming back from the Middle East, but also from Ukraine, because we have also foreign fighters in Ukraine. Do we consider the same from the same perspective or the same? Is the crime the same? Is there a crime? So always we are in this bubble. What is the relation between justice, freedoms, intervention of people, freedom of people to act from one side, on the other side, how to protect our society? We could approach this problem from different perspectives. We could approach this problem from the technological perspective because we have a continuous spy in our life. This nice friend accompany us in the evening, in the night, during the day, and he's spying us every day. So technological dimension. On the other hand, we can approach this problem from a sociological, psychological perspective, but also from the legal perspective. In the super toolkit that Anna Marconato introduced, you will see a lot of material around this, material which is legally relevant, because if you're a lawyer and you have to protect your customer in case of preventive investigations, then one of the problems will be how to approach, what is the best way to approach, how to implement what? To implement directives or decisions or regulations which in the majority of the cases risk of remaining in the paper. So what I will try to do today, shortly, is to try to understand prevention from a legal perspective, considering that some of the tools that European Commission used to enhance preventive capabilities are perfectly implemented in the paper, but are not implemented in the reality. So this is something that it's quite familiar to people working in the legal field, where you have fantastic laws, fantastic regulations, fantastic paper, but in reality then, when you go to the local police station or when you go to the local law office, then you discover that this fantastic paper does not correspond to the reality. And if it does not correspond, then the rights of the people, the rights, the jurisdictions, the attribution of police forces, the confusion between intelligence and police, all these elements might put at risk our security. So what we try to do is to try to understand how some aspects of the European legislation, let's call it legislation, are not implemented, and if we implement them, how this could contribute to a better prevention. Yeah, you have the technology in your hand. Okay. So today we'll talk about 3 legal tools available at European level, which are not implemented or formally implemented by all member states, or excluding, of course, Ireland and so on and so on. They are always excluded, but in reality, not applied and not used. So the major measure used for prevention in Europe is European arrest warrant. As you know, the number of arrest warrants in Europe is growing every year. It's growing, it's very strong, and is a very powerful tool. So what does it mean? It means that if the police during an investigation suspect that there might be a risk of terrorism or there might be a risk for the security, they automatically use this tool to block people. Block meaning arrest people at cross-border level, at a European level, or even at national level if we're speaking about third country nationals or citizens of the member states. In reality, this tool, which is composed of a number of articles, has also one article, Article 12, which says that when a person is arrested on the basis of a European arrest warrant, the executing judicial authority shall take a decision on whether the requested person should remain in detention in accordance with the law of the executing member states. The person might be released provisionally at any time in conformity with the domestic law of the executing member states, provided that the competent authority of the said member states take all measures it deems necessary to prevent the person absconding. So basically, Article 12 has to do with the principle of proportionality. How can we use proportionality measures, or do we use proportionality assessments to determine if preventive arrest is the most appropriate tool to prevent crime or to block recidivism or to grant justice? Because what we know from experience is that when we arrest young guys suspect of strange activities online in order to carry out the investigation, then through the European Investigative Order or other tools, we risk a so-called boomerang effect, keeping these young guys who didn't commit any actual crime, but their crime is somehow a preventive crime, so is a pre-crime action through which we use preventive initiatives. we risk of introducing him into a context where he might gain criminal experience, where he might feel prosecuted, where he lose his familiar connections, where he lose the connection with the rest of the society. He's then stigmatized. He has to spend a lot of money in lawyers and so on. So to which extent, or hard security measures like European arrest warrant or this type of preventive measures are effective in order to prevent the occurrence of crimes? Or do we have alternative measures, and how the judge is in the position to determine if the measure taken is the correct one in relation to the context? So it is a very difficult job for judges. It's a very difficult job for investigative agencies also to propose this type of measures. On the other hand, we know quite well from European Commission, the Home Affairs Ministries, from July 19, that some of the measures defined by the European Commission and adopted by member states, implemented by member states, in order to have a balanced approach in preventive measures, are not implemented, or on paper, but not implemented. So what they write is that the use of framework decision on probation and alternative sanction and on the European supervisor order has been limited thus far. There is a need to gather wider information on the use of non-custodial sanctions and measures in the member states. Please note that we don't speak only about measures for people who are in prisons. So we're not talking about alternative measure for people in prison, but we are talking also about pre-trial alternative measures. So measures that can be taken during the investigation, pre-trial. Before that, there is a trial. In some jurisdictions, these measures are allowed only for juveniles. In other jurisdictions are allowed for both. And we know from experience, from a quite large number of cases, that the use of these measures in pre-trial proceedings are very effective. Because these measures, if properly adopted and framed within a strategic dimension involving different agencies, involving social agents, involving educators, can be a very effective opportunity for people to change their life and their approach before getting convicted, before entering into prison. You can go ahead. So the measure we are talking about are the so-called ESO, so preventive measure in the pre-trial phase in relation to Article 12 of the European arrest warrant, and measure concerning alternative measure during penal execution, the 947. Both framework decisions are in reality not implemented at European level. Member states are not implementing these decisions. That's the reality. We carried out an assessment during the project to try to understand the number of decisions concerning the ESO. In Italy, we found one. There is only one case, just to give you an example. In other countries, judges are not aware of these framework decisions. And therefore, Article 12 of the European arrest warrant is not respected. You can go ahead.
Technology betrays.
You're betrayed. The technology is leaving us, huh?
Yeah. You call it a spy?
Yeah, because we use bad words against. Okay, that's good. Okay, however, in these slides, you find the summary of the 19 meeting of Justice and Home Affairs Ministers. I read you the conclusion because technology is not helping us today. As the European Prison Observatory noted, that's citation, there is not systematic research available which have followed the life courses of people having in the past been subject to the alternatives in comparison with those people having served the same period of time entirely in detention. There are no data on recidivism rate. Even the concept of recidivism at European level is not very well defined. For what concerns working as well as familiar and social relationships, alternative sanction, without including financial one and expulsions of foreigners, so these two measures are not included, explicitly aims at not interrupting working and social relationship when not necessary. So we don't have even quantitative and qualitative data on the application of these framework decisions. And we don't know, therefore, what are the real effects of this type of preventive measures, while we know exactly that the effects of a number of security measures taken for preventive reasons brought to increase of terrorism. We have the cases of the UK, where 83% of the people arrested for or treated for radical-related crimes or for terror-related crimes then commit act of violence. We know from the biographies of the people who committed crime that before the act of terrorism, they have imprisoned, they committed previous crime. So there is a lack in our system. There is a serious lack on how to deal with people who are at risk using measures who are not ideologically oriented. So high security or only social measures, how to combine these two elements is not known. And this is recognized by the European Commission, this is recognized by international organizations. What are the gaps? Now we have the technology again. What are the gaps and what is the level of implementation we have to consider? In conclusion, the level of implementation of the two framework decisions is far from satisfactory. Sometimes the transposition is partial and incomplete, formally adopted but underused in practice. As I said, we made an analysis at European level considering 27 countries, and the reality is very serious. So we cannot complain then. We cannot complain if the type of measure we are using is based on security, so arrest, and this type of preventive measures. Okay, so what is needed today is to try to understand, and what we have tried to do also in the project and in the super toolkit, you will find a lot of information about that. What is the relation, the correlation between the European supervision order, so preventive measures before trial, the European arrest warrant from one side. So the European arrest warrant typically involves pre-trial detention, even though the suspect has not yet convicted. But then the suspect, the people in prison, is confronted with overcrowding prisons, is confronted with a specific situation where the social connection are broken. The worsening of the prison conditions might be a trigger factor for additional reaction. The trust in the system is lost, and therefore we have to seriously consider how the implementation of Article 12 of the European Arrest Warrant can be put on practice by judges, first of all, but also by police forces. Because if you have an interception, a wiretapping, where somebody says that I would like to kill everybody in the universe, not necessarily this is a security problem. It might be a mental health problem. It might be a problem, a behavioral problem. It might be a temporary problem of somebody who has difficulties. So if we approach this situation from the security perspective, we risk of generating serious security problem. It seems to be a paradox, but it is part of the reality. We have today in many European prisons people who suffer from mental health care, and this is a very serious problem all over Europe. We are spending a lot of money in a lot of directions, but this key issue, mental problems for people in detention who shouldn't be in prison, by the way, but who are in prison because we have no alternatives, and this is again the reality. So the difference between the law and the reality, this is a huge problem. Some of them might say that I am a Muslim. They convert to Islam because they read newspaper. Others, they say I am an anarchist. Others, they say I am a pro-Russian. And so on and so on. If we approach this problem from the security perspective, using eventually assessment tools or these strange things through which we confuse crime with psychological analysis, we create damages. We generate security problems. And this is a responsibility of the public authorities because they're not providing enough services, enough solution to address the main problem of these people. So how to integrate Article 12 of European Arrest Warrant with the measures foreseen and provided by the ESO, so the European Supervision Order, this is one of the problems we have to consider. Judges, prosecutor offices, surveillance judges, so judges responsible for prison administration, have to consider before trial when we are confronted with a radicalization problem. Let me go ahead. Very good job, by the way. The second issue is the proportionality assessment. Judicial authorities, prosecutors or judges, are not forced or don't want to make proportionality assessment. So to consider if whether alternative, less restrictive measures would meet the needs of the investigating authorities. There is a large catalog of alternative pre-trial alternative measure, but also alternative measure during executions. Let's say that the European arrest warrant is the easiest solution, the low-hanging apple. There is a risk I arrest the guy will be in prison, so I move the problem from the society to the prison. But I tell you a secret, everybody go out from prison. There is no way. Sooner or later, all these guys will be out, will be in the society, will be among us. And depending how we treated these guys before, then we will have some results instead of others. And finally, there are also some people who are so used to enter in and out that they're not scared of the prison system. They know how to manage the prison system. So these simple solutions through which we think that putting people in jail will solve serious social, political, geopolitical problems is not working and is not granting security to our society. Proportionality assessment is one of the duties that judges should seriously consider and lawyers should pretend, based on European framework decisions, which are not implemented, by the way. So this is the context we are confronted with. Okay, you can go ahead. I don't enter into decision of the Court of Cassation and so on and so on. In Italy, we're pushing a lot with the new minister in this direction because we discovered what was very clear in the last 70 years. So prison is not the only alternative to grant security. So the new ministers thinks that alternative measures and the Court of Cassation, so the highest judiciary body in the country, thinks that there are restriction of freedoms is possible only where there are no other option, the ultima ratio. Therefore, some of the judicial proceedings using a European arrest warrant as an easy tool have been rejected. Not only in Europe. So the Court of Human Rights is pushing also in this direction. Here you have some of the judgments. And the same is happening today in other countries. So while from one side, we have the expansion of security measures, expansion of the powers of law enforcement agencies, which are very, very important, extension or confusion between intel activities of the intel agencies from one side and activities of the police forces on the other side. On the other hand, we have also a trend, which we would like to expand, to consider how alternative measures can balance this in order to provide to the society more freedom, more justice, and more security. Can go ahead. This is not very easy, because one of the problems that we have at European level is that alternative measures are not recognized in the same way. So let's say arrest warrant. Is arrest warrant an alternative measure, a pre-trial alternative measure? Can be considered as a pre-trial alternative measure in Italy, in Bulgaria, in France. So if we arrest somebody from Bulgaria and Italy, and we go, just for your information, one of the major cases where we applied this measure concerning the ESO was related to a young Bulgarian guy who has been arrested in Bologna because involved in terror-related activities, a very important investigation. He committed some serious acts. He was 16 old, coming from a very critical family, the mother from Bulgaria, the father from Bulgaria, but the family separated, divorced, a lot of addiction problems and so on and so on. And the guy was involved in terror-related activities in cooperation with anarchist groups. He committed serious crimes and was investigated by the special investigation teams of the Carabinieri, who wanted to arrest him immediately because of the interception, because of his relation, because of the profile, and so on and so on. The chairman of the juvenile courts of Bologna decided, no, I will risk, and imagine a judge who says terror-related crimes, so I will risk. So don't put this guy in prison, leave it to me. He organized a team of educators, psychologists, with a number of measures, a specific program. After 2 years of activities, we brought this young guy in Brussels to confront with the European Commission, DG Home, and to tell his story, because today he's a quite famous musician. He got a university degree, and everybody is happy. This is not always the story. I mean, it would be nice if it would be so easy. And you, first of all, you don't find judges who sign, I put my signature there, leave me the guy, I will take care of it, I will put together, because then you need a strong social context, you need strong services, and Bologna is, I mean, as an important city where you have this type of services, probably if it would happen, let's say in Calabria, or in other cities where you don't have a social assistant, you don't have psychologist, you don't have enough money to take care of this situation, probably the easiest solution will be, okay, you go to jail. And indeed, in this small group, there was another Italian guy who has been arrested in Milano, in the same group. Has been arrested, and then he's again in jail because he has been arrested again, and then again, and then again. So it passed from, let's say, ideological motivated terrorism to criminal context. And we have another guy, another situation very similar with jihadists, young jihadists, same tribunals, same courts. Bologna decided, I will take care of them, no arrest. The guy has been treated, and now he's a teacher, fantastic guy, and we use him as testimonial, of course. And his companion, who has been arrested, has been killed in Syria, because after the arrest, of course, he was young, has been released after 8-month prison execution. And the first thing he has done, as soon as he has been released, he went to Syria, where he has been killed. So you see, this is not always the outcome. We need to have joint legislation. We need to have a better legislation on alternative measure. In order to have this, of course, it's important to have a territorial coherence. I mentioned Emilia-Romagna, where we have Bologna, this important tribunal, this important city, but then we have tribunals in other cities who don't have the same services, who don't have the same social infrastructure ready to serve the public interest. And this is a political issue, a serious political issue. So we don't have what we call REMS. So in Trieste, we had a very serious case, a young guy with mental problem who killed 2 policemen, has been arrested, of course, but then the judges, the prosecutor office, the Nicolo, discovered that the guy cannot be convicted because he's mental unstable. So today, after the sentence, we don't know if we have to keep him in prison or what to do with him, because we know for sure that he will commit additional crime if he will be free around. But we don't have services. We don't have places in the safe houses to take care of him. So what do? Do we free him? If we free him, there will be another killing. How do we deal with this guy? This is the reality we have every day. Behind the discussion around prevention, security, justice. So what is the message coming from the project? We have the legal tools, pre and post trials. What is missing is the capacity of the system to effectively implement these decisions. All over Europe, with some exceptions, some Northern European countries should be our model in this. But except in some countries, in Europe, this dimension is missing. So our message is, we think that we all should work more on this practical dimension to provide effective services, effective solutions, real alternatives, because otherwise the system will not work. And the system will not work in highly political sensitive areas where opinions of what is radical, what is not radical, are very risky. And today, in the next months, we'll be confronted with new crises, we'll be confronted with new geopolitical problems, and this issue will become relevant, more and more relevant. So it is requested to the society to be cohesive, to have a common approach, and to provide real alternative, which is not only security, but it is security-based, considering the role of all agencies. So this is an additional message after the toolkit. from the project, and we think that we all together should work to implement new initiatives in this direction and better invest European money in services. Thank you.